Hi community. I needed to vent and share a story I experienced some time ago. My name is Laura, and until recently, I had a relationship with an amazing guy named David. He was affectionate, attentive, and always made sure I felt loved. However, despite how wonderful he was, I found myself wishing he would pursue me even more. I thought one option to achieve this was to make him jealous, even if just a little. Here's how it all started. I didn't want to involve third parties, so I decided to invent a story and act a bit. One afternoon, I organized a casual meeting with a fictitious friend named Marco. Marco was a childhood friend who, according to my stories, had recently moved to the city. The idea was subtle, just a coffee to catch up. I told David about my plan with Marco, and he, being as understanding as ever, showed no signs of jealousy. Instead, he just smiled and wished me a good time with my old friend. After simply visiting some shops, I went home and excitedly told David about our conversations, but still, no signs of jealousy. I began to wonder if maybe I was being too obvious or if David simply didn't have a jealous bone in his body. But for some reason, that only fueled my desire to keep trying. After the experience with Marco, I decided to take things a step further. I took advantage of a dinner with some classmates to add a touch of drama. I told David that I was going to meet Marco again, but this time for dinner. I noticed a slight shadow in his eyes, a glimmer of jealousy that, to be honest, excited me. However, David showed a side I didn't expect. He surprised me by suggesting that we could have dinner together instead of me going out with Marco. But my goal was to make David jealous, so I kindly told him that we could have dinner another day and that tonight was reserved for Marco since it was the only night he could. The night arrived, and I went out with my classmates, ignoring David's messages that began to pile up on my phone. I felt alive, thinking that I was finally getting the attention I was seeking. The laughter with my friends, the occasional glances at my phone to see David's accumulated messages, everything seemed to be going according to plan. However, when I returned home, instead of jealousy, I found David depressed, apathetic, even wanting to sleep on the couch that night as if he didn't want to be near me. That was somewhat disappointing, but I thought it would be a step closer to what I wanted. I tried to stay cool at that moment and pretend I didn't care, so I simply told him to do whatever he wanted that night. I went to sleep thinking he would be planning something to surprise me and make me fall in love again. I was anxious to see what he would do. After that strange and disappointing night, I decided to talk to David the next day. I wanted to understand what was going on, but more than that, I wanted to see if I could evoke some kind of reaction from him. We sat down, and I began to express my frustration, telling him how neglected I felt, even though it was a lie, hoping that would motivate him to fight for me. To my surprise, David responded in a way I didn't anticipate. Instead of apologizing or expressing concern, he told me that it wasn't his responsibility to forbid me anything and that I should know what's right and what's not. It was an unexpected response that left me stunned. Instead of backing down, I decided to raise the stakes. I made an impulsive comment, telling him that I would go with someone else if he didn't care, hoping that this threat would make him realize what he was about to lose. But David's response was even more unexpected. He simply nodded and said the decision was mine. That response was like a punch to the stomach. How could he not care enough to fight for our relationship? In my frustration, I said something I didn't really mean, that we were done and that I needed someone who would fight for me. To my surprise, David accepted the breakup without much drama. Days passed, and the reality of my decision began to weigh on me. I realized that in my quest for jealousy and attention, I had lost someone who truly valued me. Regret began to set in, and I realized that sometimes it's necessary to appreciate what you have before seeking something more. In summary, no matter how much I tried to communicate with David, he just kept giving me the runaround. My desire for jealousy and attention became the cause of the breakup with someone who truly loved me. A lesson learned the hard way. Sincerely, Laura.